Hola, buenos días, bienvenidos de nuevo. Ya nos hemos ido viendo a lo largo.
So, good morning. That's what we've seen so far. Now, it's time for me to chair them. I'm José Antonio, and we will move now to challenges and cyber intelligence. So I'm in good company here. Introduce the panel around me. First, Javier Mitxelena, who is founder of CS21Sec. They will each have 5 minutes to explain what they bring here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, INCIBE, for this wonderful opportunity. I guess this is a question that we're interested in and concerned by. So we wanted to explain what we wanted to convey. So it is about actually understanding the value of security and evolution of intelligence. So this is my presentation. What about the reality? Well, I guess we all understand what security is, and I guess this is part of our daily life, cybersecurity. Probably intelligence is not a non-unmaterial topic that we discuss in different fields, and bringing it to the digital world is a challenge ahead of us for the upcoming years. I guess one of the main concerns is our capability to understand changes happening. I find right now, when everyone discusses what digital transformation means through connectivity, we change the way we do business, the way we relate to each other, and the way we gather information. Just as an example or a metaphor, whenever we say security, we got to the dictionary and we know what it is. It is a feeling, it is an understanding, something where there is no risk, no danger, and this is something that we know about in our daily life. If we go to our regular Google, that's what we go to whenever we want to find something, and we type cybersecurity, there are several entries discussing it, and there is also a Wikipedia entry, and that's a security concept translated into the cyberspace. That's where we find data, companies, and that's what we want to protect, we want to secure. I guess intelligence is something else. Intelligence has to do with the public side of it and not so much with the company field. So whenever there is a process, we have data, we need to process it, and we need to apply it. And the ideal thing is to make a choice. And intelligence is not just for security, but also for business concepts and other elements. So it is key for us to understand that everything has been worked on from a real point of view. So this is physical security. It needs to be translated into something new, into a new model. And so when we go to the Wikipedia, cyber intelligence is not actually defined. There is just a concept. And it is interesting, and it is related to what we will discuss here. They mentioned CISPA, which is the US project where they've defined information sharing between public and private sides with the idea of defending national infrastructures. It's not a definition, but yet it's a concept we will discuss today. And if we want to add cyber intelligence to intelligence, there's a risk, and it's the risk of using digital models for what we know how to do in the real world. And that's what we need to discuss here. There are different definitions. Cyber intelligence can be defined as focusing on cybersecurity. So how can we gather information or share information when we want a pool of infrastructures? But the reality is that world's changed. In 19th century, we had the railway, and then 20th century, it's communicated in critical infrastructures, and 21st century, it's data. As for financial reality, we've had 4 revolutions with the Industrial Revolution: steam, electricity, oil, and then information. So now we need to talk about information. We've changed companies, industrial companies are changing, and as part of the companies in the past and now, there are people, there are processes, and there are products or technologies. And the key here would be that our assets that used to be physical, they are now becoming logic assets, and that is information, that it is clients, that it is know-how, that it's infrastructures. We need to know that that's a real change, because that's a change we are facing in the companies, we are facing for the government and regulations, and also the relationship that we need to follow both cross-sectional and horizontally. Public administration, companies, and citizens, for which we need technology and innovation. We need to be creative and change the model. What a business person, what's the administration to face now? Data, lots of data, and there's something different today, different from what we used to have in the past. So now we need to work in a global field, but it used to be local in the past. But global field or scope means that I need to understand that all data need to be processed. When we discuss it, information, intelligence, we are discussing data. And I find what's paramount here is to understand processes, people, technology, but yet there are risks. So whenever we say intelligence in this kind of forum, we need to focus on intelligence or cyber intelligence for cybersecurity. An example, I guess we've all lived and is discussed here, it is WannaCry. WannaCry, when we say transfer and cooperation, on WannaCry's day, when talking to clients, there were clients that had gotten even 20 different reports about the fact analysis. So different, well, not companies, but vendors and non-vendors that were just sending the information. What's the reality there? Reality is that in the end, the incident happened, and we had 3, 4, 5 different indicators, different organizations saying us there was a risk. And this is post-mortem, this is afterwards. And the key to intelligence is that this does not happen anymore. And we need to have a contact point to know what the risk level is. And if we go even further, there will be other problems. Espionage has become cyber espionage, and this is terrible. APTs, and this is the espionage in cyber industrial espionage. That's what companies are enduring now. And then we have post-truth. We face facts we do not analyze. The key to intelligence is analyzing. In cybersecurity, often things are not analyzed. And what about misinformation? If I want to generate a conflict, I can do so through misinforming on fora. If I want to make profit, I can. And as Thomas, so it's transfer. Transfer is something that is done from technology as part of data process, but there is still a key, and that's people. For cyber intelligence, the person will be the one that has the final choice. As this guru from Da Vinci Institute says, future is made in present time. So for the future, we need to build it today. Throughout the next years, we will see how robots will change their work professions, will take up new professions, but we also need to create new jobs because they will not replace us all. And so from training and capacity building, we need to have new professionals, which needs to be future value to support our companies and countries and people. So first conclusion, cyber intelligence is underway. There's still not science for cyber intelligence. Secondly, how do we make transfer happen? I think this has been discussed as well. PPPs, innovation, we need to have more technology so that we can reach data easily. We need to have the analysis capabilities and professionals. We need resources we're missing. We need to have those professionals, as I said. We need to have the national models in line with current stages and with Europe and with citizens. We need to have a governance model. This is key. Who raises their hand based on the kind of incident or risk, and then digital training. That's the key. New professionals come from the digital world, and they need to know how to use the real world. And then questions. This is another key. We want to cooperate. This is a buzzword, cooperation. Who are we protecting? Country, citizens, companies? Who's the enemy? Who's the competitor? I need to understand what's the stage I have ahead of me. How do we coordinate each other? Who's leading? All three indicators need to be one. Who's leading it all, and how do we manage it? Who is filtering information? Who's sorting out information, and how? Who can understand the filling of a digital concept? Who can understand it all? And finally, who's paying? Who's paying it all? In the end, if we want to have professional companies and everything else, and we want to be competitive, someone needs to pay for the recipe. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Xavier, por la contextualización. Es todo fenomenal.
Thank you, Javier, for giving us context. Then we have Juan Gómez Bule, who works for different companies in different positions. So, José Antonio, if you agree, because I walk around most of the time, well, it happens to me as well. And since it's been 10 years now that Xavier and I have been working together, it is clear that he's added context, as Antonio said, and it's all well organized and orchestrated. From a point of view of a profession or intelligence professionals, we need to look further and go beyond what's evident. We need to train analysts, and we need to train those people who, as Xavier said, are a scarce asset. Because this is not just models or analysts, data analysts, but this is an ecosystem that needs to interpret a much more global environment. Everyone is working and using different technologies. We are a walking sensor. I have 3 phones on me. And I'm a sensor here. So we are not just expelling information, whether willingly or not, but it is something we cannot think. This is a social environment. When I specialized in behavioral change analysis, I was told, are you crazy? But then when I move into technology, so you're a sociologist, politologist, and now you move on to technology, what will you do? Well, crisis management, expectation management, and basically we have this discipline that it's evolving, and this is a transnational concept that goes into those environments where some capabilities are to be developed as part of managing boards, because the constant question to so many people is, I have some degree of uncertainty. Please minimize it for me. This is an ever-changing world, fast-changing world, where I need to surf a tech wave with a digital transformation that seems to be the end when it is actually the means. So placing things where they belong, it's an art. So for technology, we need to place it where it is. We need to use it properly. We need to have a security by design, cybersecurity by design. We need to train them on those capabilities and skills. We need to understand the reality. Here we have a discipline as part of intelligence or cyber intelligence, and that is complex networks, analysis of complex networks. That's what we call asymptotic networks. Whatever it's under the radar, when it is not the dark web. The element that is underlying an obvious element, which leads to a series of confrontations between what's real and what's apparent. And sometimes what we are asked is, if I'm having to make a choice, and they will get information from an analyst, from an expert from the law enforcement agencies or a private agency, or even intel cells that Xavier pointed to, and companies, we need to get used to working on an element that is all about synthesizing or summarizing reality into 10 lines top. So anyone can make a choice based on that, but in a responsible way. And often we make choices that are polluted because we have an excess of information, so that you get an idea. When we look into analysis work, 80% of the time is just for debugging information, and sometimes we justify our own work because we work very hard in in order to gather information. There is something paramount here, and that is that if you're making your best, if you're doing your best to look for something, you don't find it. If you have some prejudices, you don't see the reality. But actually, it is twisted just so that it meets what we want it to be like. So that's why we ask, this is a wonderful product. How is it that no one is buying it? Well, you haven't been listening to the user or the voters or the citizenship, and so there is a greater social gap, a business gap. As for cyber intelligence, well, this is a way of understanding reality by using what's known as a good mechanism to understand reality, and that is cybersecurity. And so when we think of the tech world and non-tech elements, those are paramount to understand the reality. And there will be questions, and I figure there will be interesting questions on, is that reality real? Is it not? Are we using it? What information are we using? Is it a decision making when we are under an influence of someone else? Is this a user experience, a tourist experience? Are we actually a willing actor? Are we just acting or reacting? Do we take up responsibility for our decisions? Or is it just a momentum that has become something biological and impulsive? That's been all for me.
Thank you very much, Juan Antonio. It's good that you said about your walking sensor. No wonder, because you are full of devices. Right, our next panelist is Mikel Rufián. He works at Innotec. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you very much, Juan, for giving us context and background about intelligence. I just don't want to repeat any of the things that have been said here today. I just want to leave some time for question and answers. So I'm going to talk about cyber intelligence. Well, but often we only focus on threats, but there are also risks and opportunities there. And as you have seen, all these areas have grown exponentially in the last few years. When we talk about cyber intelligence, we should not conceptually think about something which is purely technological. Well, those who are using those data, that information, is the analysts who will extract value from that. So therefore, technology dependence, even if we are talking about cyber security and cyber intelligence, well, gives us that knowledge, and well, sometimes some of these products are not valid for this type of cyber intelligence. And also considering the digital transformation that many entities have gone under, have also required many analog processes to become digitalized as soon as possible. Therefore, some vectors may find themselves at risks. For instance, IoT, for instance, devices that have to be connected to the internet, whether we like it or not. There may be new vectors that may become of concern to us. So for all that, the models that we have right now about cybersecurity are not actually covering for this layer of security, of protection that we'd like to have. So therefore, we should go beyond that through our models of intelligence in terms of prevention and detection. And that's where we are failing the most nowadays. And we are not talking about having higher budget or state-of-the-art technology, because even if you have the state-of-the-art technology, the best analysts, if you have a threat, you would surely will have to live with it. So therefore, we have to see whether the threat is there. We need to answer as soon as possible, to respond as soon as possible, to neutralize that threat, that contingency, and being resilient enough to have that capacity to stand up and continue walking and working. So, well, it's been said that cyber intelligence is work in progress, even if, well, many public administrations do not want to talk about it, but actually it is a scientific discipline which is being studied in some universities and clashing with classic intelligence. So, well, as I say, this cyber intelligence is reaching out companies. So in Spain, we are working on it since 2015. If I'm not mistaken, the National Center of Intelligence has been training companies and universities to permit that to transfer it or to disseminate it. And then we have the intelligence that we want to further develop thanks to initiatives such as these of INCIBE and then the Cryptologic National Center. So one of the challenges that we face today is about sharing information. At the end of the day, in cyber intelligence, as we can all see, we are talking about external sources of the organization, but at the end of the day, cyber intelligence is any information that takes place that is caused or created on the cyberspace. So that is to say, it's about having a maximum information to channel it as suitable. So we have lots of technology. Technology has its own dashboard. Sometimes information is structured, sometimes it is not a structure. So this is for you to understand the level of complexity when it comes to managing that information. Also, technological challenges bringing together several technologies, several manufacturers, so that we can end up channeling that information rightly. And then systems from the administration, from other organizations that are coming together to share information. Whenever a security incident takes place, it is the victim who reports it. So we are already late. We are reacting. So we have not detected early enough. We know analysis have helped detect that. So we're talking about cyber intelligence. We are not talking about security or technology incidents. We should also take into account the stakeholders, the players in the cyberspace. Well, those actors may have their own motivations. Anything that they do in that environment may have an impact on us. And then, thanks to digital transformation, we will also be suffering from new pathologies. Well, there aren't any cross-sectional health studies telling us about collateral impacts from the heavier use of mobile devices. That could also end up being a barrier that we should consider as one of our variables. And then research and development of national products. We will work closely with national entities and just to buy products at home, domestically, and not outside our country. And okay, this is all from me, and I just stop here just to leave some time for questions and answers from the public, from the audience. So now I would like to introduce you to Javier Zubieta. He is the head of business development of GMB. So thank you very much for inviting me to be here. It is a real pleasure to share this roundtable full of talent and experience. Because I'm the last speaker, it would just be impossible for me not to repeat things that have been said. I will try to give you some information about the positioning of my company, GMV. We've been providing cybersecurity services for many years now, and actually we are now providing what is known today as cyber intelligence services. In the past, this was not the term that was used. This is a recent term, but classic old services such as digital vigilance, early alert, or analysis of high volumes of information had reason to be, had an own entity in themselves a few years ago. But we realized that by connecting this type of services, that is to say, information delivered by one of those services, when we could see that that information could feed other services, that could help us elevate the efficiency and performance of the system. So we could see that binding, that glue that was facilitated through experts. We may refer to these experts in a different manner today, but we could see that those experts were providing that layer of intelligence, that is to say, going beyond what was evident, with the final end objective of having our customers making the best possible decision. So, but this type of services, cyber intelligence services, we should not contextualize them in broadly, but specifically. So the demands or requirements from our customers, therefore our positioning is to be as specialized as possible. And many times success lies in having a most restricted, most narrowed down context as possible, so that we have the best possible definition of purposes and objectives. So, for instance, we may have cyber intelligence to fight against fraud in the financial sector, but we could specialize more on that and focus, for instance, on fraud on credit cards. And there we could specialize ourselves as much as possible in technology, tools, just to end up offering added value products and services. I would also like to mention a couple of fields that where we see significant potential for cyber intelligence in the short, mid, and long term. First of all, training or being prepared to respond to incidents. So being ready for cyber incidents, so that preparedness will help us sometimes deactivate the event. So therefore, if that activity is specified or put in the right context, may be much more effective. And then being more effective in recovery. So, well, cyber intelligence is often used to find out about what happens and the root cause. So we should not be at loggerheads if we find out that we've been attacked and we don't know why. That will happen sooner or later. So we should be aware of that. So therefore, cyber intelligence could help us understand what happened, or at least to come closer to what happened in order to, well, for accountability reasons. Okay, and this is all from me. Well, considering this is a highly interesting topic and we have high-level panelists with us today, so I'd like to take some questions from the audience. So I see two hands raised. Okay, microphone, please. Hello, how are you doing? Do you have any formula in place that would allow to mention to a management board or to a CEO the level of risk that they run when they enter into a competition or a tender abroad because they haven't made their homework? That's a really good question, Roman. That's one of the keys. So we are talking about data. We are talking about countries, strategies. We are talking about our competitors. So when we are talking about cyber intelligence, I would get rid of the prefix cyber. So we are talking about intelligence, economic intelligence, financial intelligence, and some countries are ahead of us. We know that some countries or companies are being awarded the tender for whatever reason, perhaps because of the information analysis. Digital world makes us make a quantitative step. So therefore, where we have information about our competitors that may come from 3 or 4 different countries. When we are into new businesses, when there is no physical space, trying to understand who is our competitor, the information they have, how your information is received. That's one of the key reasons when I said that cyber intelligence is work in progress. It's because it is work in progress, because there are no companies offering that type of services. And as I say, some countries are ahead of us in that. So largest risks come from the 2 or 3 well-known players. So we should try to build up a model that would allow us to be competitive, that is to say, to take part in international tenders and to be awarded the tender. Well, there are 2 keys here. First of all, winning the tender and then making money, making a profit. That's one of the main problems that we have. Well, José Antonio and myself, we created an intelligence company back in 2008. Okay, in the first 6 years, it was worse than a desert. It was just impossible to extrapolate those future risks to organizations. We tried to do that, but the answer that we always took was a no. So, for the last 2 years, cyber intelligence is now entering large organizations, and economic crisis have also helped us understand that we need to be internationally competitive. And it's been said that 70% of the IBX lives on intelligence. So if we want to have competitive companies, we have to have the capacity to anticipate, to have foresight. That's the key. So the problem is that today we have much more information. We know that nothing is perfect, everyone who works in mathematics. So I've told to my mathematician friends, okay, that they should be working in other fields other than teaching. So we have to align business and risks. So our teams should be interdisciplinary so that we end up being better than our competitors. Yes, well, answering Roman's question. So on the one hand, we have the CEO or the management board who are interested in the risks that they have incurred in terms of compliance, that is to say, due to what they don't know or potential risks. So that's the danger of both doing and the danger of not doing. There is a danger in both. As Javier mentioned before, for the last 10 years, we've been trying to develop this core of economic intelligence for Spain, and we tried that into different governments with the Socialist Party and with the Popular Party. We could not give momentum to that, dynamize it. So when the National Cryptology Center was created and was allocated a budget back in 2005, and that was followed by in 2007 with a royal decree of configuration of National Center for Protection of Critical Infrastructures. So what is of concern to CEOs? Well, when CEOs call you, they are really frightened. So and they don't know what hat we will wear. Wear the hat of a hacker, the hat of a researcher. So as we said before, management board. So they have an ongoing emotion, the emotion coming from uncertainty. What do we do with intelligence? As Javier mentioned before, that's one of our mottos. Intelligence is seeing beyond the evidence. Seeing beyond the evidence. And there comes a time that we have to take a stand. A stand is what is happening in my environment. Well, first of all, we have to monitor the landscape, the environment. Well, one of the slides that Javier showed you was when we opened up our company in 2008. So I was the president, he was the vice president. We sold 0, nothing at all. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. We learned at that time. So, in terms of understanding intelligence is something that companies need. So, nowadays it is not that important that we are spies or that we wear raincoats, but that we have an understanding of reality. So, therefore, incur risks, and we have metrics for that, also technologies for management, information, all that aimed at understanding the what's, but from the technology perspective, the hows, and what are being asked. And the questions that I ask are these powerful questions, the whys and the what for. When we are a target, why we are a target, what are we a target for. So in this situation of vulnerability or a commercial dispute, who wins in all that, who benefits from all that? So we really want to understand who is behind those who are behind. And this is what in the end discloses the what for or the whys and why a company or a government has been attacked. I'd like to say that for that specific case, PP, public and private partnership and collaboration is essential, despite the company or the country where we are. Well, we know that companies have the trusted companies to channel information. So therefore, in countries where the intelligence culture is higher than us, what they do is just to share. They share that information. We have to follow that model, and public entities should facilitate and should be in a position to share information, because at the end of the day, all parties benefit from that information sharing. Also financial intelligence, and also a nuance of financial cyber war, as it's been the case in some countries and also in Spain. Well, nothing to add from me. Well, we had another question. Well, first of all, congratulations for your contribution. Well, intelligence has been there for 3,000 or 4,000 years, and cyber intelligence, as you said, well, 10 years. So now, I'd like to ask you, what's positive about historical intelligence, and what do we need now in cyber intelligence that we don't get from classic intelligence? So I'd like you to be brief in your answers, please. Well, I start. Well, in terms of cyber intelligence, we are tapping clearly into all the intelligence or modus operandi of criminals. So that is to say, criminal science helps look into, go beyond the engineering, and well, to break molds and to reach further. So, well, from cyber intelligence, we can fully learn from that. That is to say, to put ourselves in the mind of those who are determined to cause damage. And so in the past, when we did traditional analysis from the defense perspective, so at the time we used to do a static analysis, a strategic planning in the mid and in the long term. Elasticity of the attack and of the battle makes us understand reality in a different manner. Immediacy makes intelligence to become a hyper-accelerated cycle. We are in traditional terms in the past. Well, now, one of the challenges that we have is transformation of our national intelligence system. Domestic intelligence, external intelligence, communication between law enforcement agencies. And we know about the implications of non-governmental law enforcement agencies, and then intelligence services from both the military and the intelligence cells of companies. Luis, I don't know whether we are answering your question. Traditional intelligence was adapted to traditional situation, your objective, your company, your country. There were a number of specific means and resources. Well, times were longer than now. We are in a digital world where changes are just terrific. So the idea is how to anticipate, how to be ahead of time. So internet has changed our life, has changing our mindset. So the key to the new model to be built up is just having the capacity to align the human capabilities with technological capabilities. Machine learning, indeed, will help us resolve problems before they take place. So the key here is to build up. So if you look to the cybersecurity system, we are missing a strategy, vision, money, talent. We have to build more on that. And about that, and the same goes with cyber intelligence. When we shift from physical to logical security, well, the people sitting here today have changed. Two different concepts, but in a converged model. The same goes for intelligence. Traditional intelligence will have to support itself in different modes of intelligence, different mindset. When you build up a digital company, you will change this topic. So I panic every time all consulting companies and companies are talking about Industry 4.0. We don't know about it because it is work in progress. So when I decide to change my business, who I am trusting. So for instance, I don't know, a cinema theater chain, okay, Netflix, this and that. What do I do if I have a cinema? Well, I'm going to manage the space. I have 100,000 users, so therefore the business model in the future will be completely different. So that is to say, anticipate yourself to what HBO and Netflix have done. That's the key to business, not only from the viewpoint of companies, but of countries. How are we going to be competitive in this globalized world? That's one of the challenges ahead of us. So the change comes from fast changes. So we have to be ahead of what will happen to us. That is to say, to make correct decisions. Well, it will be a trial and error thing, same as learning. So, well, same as tenders. You either win the tender or you learn. Well, same here. I just would like to add something. We have always thought that sequentially. We have always thinking sequentially. Now we're talking about lateral thinking. I would say that, well, sequences are horizontal in time, but vertical sequences in time from the viewpoint of the quantum physics makes us that models immediacy, no space and no time, or even the attack against targets, or presuming an attack on something where you don't know who is the attacker, that generates uncertainty in the diffuse intelligence model as is being referred to by NATO. So, and that's where we are now. We are working on that model, the model of transformation, and this is very, very uncomfortable. We humans are very uncomfortable when it comes to making changes. Okay, changing habits. It's uncomfortable, even if we're talking about our individual habits. Well, it takes 21 days to introduce a change in our habits. And if not, we go into the Sisyphus myth, okay? And we really want to come out of that circle. And I would like to highlight retrospective analysis, to say, to look back and to take it into account because, well, many patterns repeat themselves, okay? We should not forget about the past, about the history. So traditional intelligence, well, traditionally, well, the sources had a best before date, but now expiry time. But now we have real-time sources of data that can be complemented with visual sources of data, etc. Okay, so now I have a question. So now we have Cyberwar, which is a buzzword, a magic word. So now it seems that everyone's talking about Cyberwar. That's public. Do you believe that we are going through that is taking place? What would be the role of cyber intelligence and cyber counterintelligence?
Javier,
So Javier, we'll start here, because otherwise you take the mic all the time. I think there is a cyber war happening out there, but there are parameters we are not used to, so we cannot make it tangible anymore. So if we define it as a war between the states, I find everyone knows about it, the media, everything that is going on right now. And if we talk to other kinds of thinner war that goes under the radar, I guess it's a constant ever since there's been the internet and connectivity. I think there is a concerning war now, those who can take you down, who can really hurt you, compared to other means that would be the good side, that is not willing to attack or daring to attack. So I feel there is a missed balance, but you don't know who to attack anyway. And think within a couple of generations it will be sorted out, but not right now. You need to identify an enemy, you need to have an attribution, and this is very complicated now, but yes, there is a cyber war for sure. I would also add that adding cyber as a prefix, well, it might be a bit exhausting, because war is a war, doesn't matter where you are, airborne or land-based, whatever. So adding a prefix, in the end, is just one plane, and we should have a global view of the threat or risk ahead of us. Yes, is there a cyber war? There is. But maybe this new cyberspace environment is a bit more complicated to attribute or design who the stakeholders are, or who is responsible for what. The counter-intelligence or counter-war, yes, there is. It's quite easy to add false pieces of information out in the cyberspace, so that we can mislead people to think it's been a given country or activists. So actions that can be used, as we said, to make profit in the company at a given time, for a call for attendance, for example. If there is been a reputational attack, then they made a fool of those people. Who's next? You, me? Cyber war. Is there a cyber war? Yes, there is. Fifth space, well, it started in August last year. So they've defined at the NATO this fifth space. So we have air, space, and cyberspace. And so there is this fifth domain where we have different rules, different things, and there are different playing rules. Do we have the financial war using the cyber world to promote cyber attacks? Yes, there are. Actually, there are some states, as Xavier mentioned, such as France, that has the financial war school. It's not the non-peace school, but when we identify a risk, we need to name it as it is, because unless you properly identify it, you will not be able to identify it and will not be able to take action against it. So this is a situation that is a permanent conflict. Yes, that's right. There is a new doctrine since 1999 that it's the unrestricted war. Unrestricted war means that it is asymmetrical and it takes conflict down to the citizenship. And the main goal of war is damaging the state, so that citizens understand that their risks are not, their rights are not upheld. And this is cheaper than traditional weapons. That's where we find ourselves now. Do we live in that situation? That's right, yeah. Are we ready to identify the risk? Yes, more and more. Can we tackle that risk same as with a conventional risk, as Javier said? Not so much. I think it's been discussed. I guess instead of cyber war, I would say cyber risks. Problem now is we don't know who the enemy is. We have an intuition, we think about it. If there is a political scenario where we can change the direction of elections, someone would be interested. I don't know if that's a war concept or a strategy concept. What I think is missing here is what we discussed first. Strategy. What's the strategy of a country for defense? And the way to be competitive. What do we have at companies? What options do we have to be competitive? In recent years, we had to look into several APTs in large companies. So who is part of it? I guess you come to realize there is an underlying country, a given country, which main goal is to copy, to learn, and compete all alike. So from that point of view, I figure there is this fifth domain, completely different, cannot be physically defended. It's a virtual concept. And we need to combine the public and the private parts of it. That is cooperation, that is transfer. And we need to have a model so that you are in your best shape. I guess the society, there's been a change from the youngest to the oldest. It's a radical change. How young people use technologies brought them so many opportunities and so many risks alike. Do companies know how to use the internet and the networks and companies? Do they? Do we have a governance model so that we are up to it? I don't know if it's a war or a cyber war, but at least it's a cyber risk on the table, and it can have damaging effects. So it's not the same as an H-bomb, but it goes even further. And from that point of view, we need to handle it. So it's not just, so we need to be occupied with it, not just about being preoccupied, but be occupied and be reliable. So, questions from the audience? First of all, congratulations on using this topic that is so interesting and relevant. And yet, I would like to refer to the new cyber intelligence models and how complicated they are, and specify those. Any examples where you include the role of advertising, propaganda, and counter-propaganda, and being a bit more specific? What about Catalonia? So I always go into battles, and I will paddle this away. Estimate for propaganda managed by the Catalan government, 300 million euros for the last 5 years. Not 300 million total, but together in all 5 years. Then counter-propaganda states estimate or budget 0. So influence and counter-influence, you see that if you understand and underestimate your opposition as if they were just a columnist, from an anarchist nationalist perspective, it is someone that has a clear objective for 20 years now and understand the goal, knowing what it is, but you don't know what it is. So you are underestimating them, let them race and run, do nothing for education or for culture or anything. Why is that? Because you inhibit yourself. So propaganda and counter-propaganda, well, this is I guess the best example is Putin. He is the director of the intelligence service, and he works as a prime minister, but he works as a intelligent head of intelligence with real influence, who can destabilize and lead to entropy wherever he acts. So I think those influence models and counter-influence models are real. Often there is a topic that some colleagues from the law enforcement agencies that mentioned it. Traditionally, until we change the criminal law, as a matter of fact, the plain rules are always beneficial for the criminal, because with those rules or standards you need to stay within legality, which means that it is a problem when you need to uphold the rule of law. It has been changed, and luckily you see it's been adjusted and adapted, and I figure Elvira Tejada later today will explain why, because we've worked with judges and DAs and everything, such as the legal department and all the state elements, the legislative power and the legal power, because this is all changing and we actually need to change the model. I find it interesting how those influence and counter-influence lines, or propaganda and counter-propaganda, are happening, and that's the exercise that gets my eye here, and against which we as a state have not been able to act against it in order to minimize it, to narrow it down, contrary to what we're seeing every day, because it is not something we are speculating about. We just watch the news and we're just lagging behind events. We are never ahead of it, and being ahead of it after 20 years means going further than the legal standards, because we need to convey to the society the reason for the fourth generation wars that I mentioned before, one of the main elements of all 11 lines around which the new war policies revolve around, that's it, the media war, confusion, and when that is placed within the society, then it takes you way too longer to remedy it. So, as we said before, that it is time for post-truth, as you said. And we do not go into a deeper analysis. If you have a strategy and have the capability to massively reach people out through the media, that's it. We cannot think, well, you get a clip, see it, and believe it. You don't actually analyze it. So it's all about marketing, more than anything else, more than intelligence or anything else. If you want to start a campaign or launch an element through the internet, despite the 300 million that Juan Antonio said, it is even cheaper than any physical campaign you can have following any other means. So the key is education. We have not had digital education. We're trained for immediacy. We've all had some kinds of phishing attacks or spoofing attacks. We've all been told that if you go into this URL and you will be part of a core draw and there's a prize. So social engineering is part of it. I guess the human factor is the key. If we can train ourselves, it'll be difficult for that any other campaign will attack us from scratch. But if we live in misinformation and if we live in the lack of truth or post-truth, it'll be difficult to tackle this kind of initiatives. That's what we need to do. How can we build something which right now it is beating us from a social and financial point of view? Well, social challenges, in order for you to understand its dimensions and how easy it happen, and there are measures in order to identify this kind of movements, but they might not be active. We cannot just look ourselves into the mirror. We need to look around the environment and see all the stakeholders. You need to know who they are, spot them, and have them be part of your analysis. Yes, let me add a practical point of view, resources point of view. There is a series of tech elements in order to track down both statically and social media and in other environments, whether there is a willingness to act according to what is being tracked and traced and monitored. Well, there you will have and think whether it is your strategy. There is also technology in order to identify patterns and so that you can adapt yourself. If there are campaigns for propaganda that are well orchestrated, you can find them and have a hunch about them. It's not so much technological or know-how, but also what you want to do about it and whether you actually want to do something about it. Thank you very much. Final question?
Hola, creí que me habías pisado la pregunta con lo de la...
I actually thought your question and mine were the same, but judging by the answers given, I'm not satisfied. I guess the whole discourse in every fora is cyber defense, detection, prevention, fast recovery. Maybe this is not politically correct to say cyber war, but when you say cyber war, we think it's a cyber risk, right? Because somehow, even if we knew who to attribute this to, who is the person, the state, whoever is attacking us, can we attack back? Do we have the cyber attack capabilities that are needed? Can we have more cyber weapons available in order to meet up the challenge? Good question. Javier, you go first. From a tech point of view, cyber weapons are available to the states, to all states. I don't think there's any state who will be willing to send a cyber weapon as a reply to an attack where they are not 100% sure about the attribution. Even if we are thinking of the axis of evil countries, I don't think there is any other country from the axis of good starting the countermeasure or counteraction based on the attack they've suffered. I don't see it.
sí. Siempre y cuando esté dentro.
So, whenever that is within legality, according to proper and necessary defense proportional to the attack received, and as long as you know the direct attribution. Don't you think that it is possible? I don't think it is feasible. I don't think it is realistic. I think there would be another kind of war, but not a cyber war. I guess this question needs to be asked to the organisms that have the power to organize it. I would say that instead of cyber weapons used by a state, I think we need to focus on defensive intelligence measures, because you need to have a powerful weapon, but once you have it there, you will be a victim of strong attacks, hard attacks. This is being regulated for national security, but this also a discussion to use those at a legal level. So terrorism and investigation, that way you can have preventive actions. I figured that apart from proportionality, attribution, etc., I guess the conflict that this can mean having offensive cyber weapons, I guess this is one of the traditional questions. Are they defensive or offensive? So what is part of legality is, if there's an attack happening as you mentioned, where there is attribution, there's proportionality, so it is not just replying based on the attack. So it is not just for cyber weapon, but also having to do with the attributable capacity to have them step down, because this is up to the state. It's not for the companies. It would be a vulnerability otherwise, and law enforcement agencies know. But what about the strengths of the state in Spain? Maybe other states see it differently, but our legality and the NATO and the EU's legality, that is, it's quite clear. Cyber weapons can be used in any case, and then tools and conventional weapons in the defense of a territory against a stakeholder that attacks one or several member states of the NATO or the European Union. I'm not so clear about it. I guess cyber weapons and attacks that we all endure, there is a pool of digital weapons that are attacking someone, an infrastructure, a series of users, whatever. From a legal and public point of view, this is on the table, saying it is offensive. Well, it is part of our daily work. Understanding how to react, it is something that I guess cannot be done, because this is part of social security. So there will be laws on it. I figure that down the road we are working on tactics from a technological point of view. It's not just defending yourself, but understanding who the enemy is and deceiving them. It is not cyber weapon, it's a strategy, and you need to work on it, but it'll come. The internet is much more dangerous from the point of view of risks than others. We've discussed critical infrastructures for a long time now. They attack those infrastructures with a Trojan and cyber weapons, whatever the tool it is. While we're discussing it, we are people, and this is happening everywhere. To what extent are we aware as part of the attack who the attacker is, and to what extent can you reply to it or act on it? Some clients asked for a counter-attack, but legally that is not feasible. If you are not protected by the law, if there is no sentence, we cannot do it. From the digital point of view, having the sentences or having the warrants, it is a future challenge. We still need to go through the traditional ways to tell you when and how you can intervene and what not. It is what people are working on it, and I guess those advanced countries, they have the weapons for some time and they use them even though we are not aware. I guess the tipping point here would be if there is a direct correlation between cyber attack and loss of human life. Because now we are talking about closed nuclear plants and the country risk, but whenever there is a human loss, this will be different. No more time, I guess, no more much time. So according to Javier's comment, It has happened. The Syrian Electronic Army points out people that others will execute, and they use info intelligence and attacks to geolocate them, and then someone from a Chad's regime goes there and kills them. Simple as that. So I guess we all need to think that it's not post-Westphalian word anymore, but it's post-Westphalian now, and we need to react. We need hat back in order to survive. So legal experts need to understand that the way to understand the world has changed. I don't know what you think. As for Budapest Convention and development and coding of legislation, it all has to change for sure. Society is changing at a faster speed, and maybe the regulatory standards are changing, and often when we are scared we bring too much regulation, and so we are not acting because of that, or because of that over-regulating. But I think it is not fast track. We would love to have a wonderful ship to sail fast through it, and we don't have it, but it is clear then that those risks for the convergence between a tool and a structuring attack it and then working on it, and our society changes, and the risks and modalities and are multiplied as well. So I guess this is a series of apocalyptic environments, and this also leads to some competitive and technological edges that we need to tap on. So we are running out of time, but still I wanted to take a twist here, because at INCIBE we are worried about talent, identifying talent, promoting talent, etc. And same as with cybersecurity. For intelligence and cybersecurity, you all agree that we need people who are better prepared and informed. So quick question, because we don't have much time before we get some extra sound bites. So what are the skills a professional needs to be a good cyber intelligence professional? What kind of training is needed here? I guess I bet on having multidisciplinary teams, because if we want to have cyber superheroes that can bring it all together and work with everything else in a balanced way, I don't think it is possible. But there's also an open debate, for example, for DPOs, the way how much train or what kind of training they need. When it comes to cyber intelligence, I guess it's all about not having the super experts, but having multidisciplinary experts. We can have data analysts, criminologists, statistic experts, mathematicians. For cyber intelligence, I would go even further. We need to have that intelligence analysis module. I think it's important. And thinking of IT tools, and maybe it's a bit more mental process. And since we will be in the cyberspace, we need to have a general knowledge of the environment where we'll be acting, so that we can be specialized in any of the cases that might come up. And these are not just in IT profiles, but we open it up to gather people from legal fields and psychologists and sociologists. That's where our jobs are, and then that's the new environment citizens have explained, and so there will be cyber jobs. Thank you. What I would say is, when it comes to technical skills and interdisciplinarity, I think it is paramount for them to have some skills, such as not being scared to relearn or mislearn, and so that they are not afraid of using both the brain hemispheres. We usually use just one, especially men over female, male over female. But there's a different way of thinking. There is a different way of understanding the reality, so we can have a proper diagnosis. There are people who use their left hemisphere more than others. Maybe some of us use the right one more. But in the way, we need to have a well-balanced team with some skills and abilities, not just tech abilities, but also soft skills, communication skills. Because if there is no communication, it doesn't exist. In the end, we at the organizations, we can have wonderful works done, but if we cannot convey what we want, it can be just a redeem. I work a lot on autism because I'm really interested in autistic patients, and we work with people who have pre-Asperger or Asperger syndromes, and still they have a capability to focus, but still you need to work with them. And I guess we need to work on interdisciplinarity. This is wonderful what it's being done, and those of us who studied humanities, we love it, the chance of having a global thought, a renaissance thought, and from the point of view of both realities, because the philosophical environment, I love it. I think it's patent. But again, we need to get the human being, again, not as something disgregated no more. I think everything's been said. It's all about training. It's not just having a topic or having a person, a physicist or an expert. We need to gather people from different disciplines, and they all need to do their job. We need to understand what the model is, what the strategy is. We need to cover all capabilities. I think the technologist needs to bring us immediacy, and analysts can be criminologists, sociologists, so business experts as well. It'll be dependent on what you want to work on, and you need to understand your business, whether it's security or it is a company that is competing against others. And training is the key. I guess the problem with training is timing. Within 6 years we will have professionals, but we cannot afford to wait that long. We need to train them beforehand, and we need to train them in shorter times. Dual vocational training, or training rather, I think it is another key nowadays in the field of cyber intelligence if we actually mean to be competitive. That's the key on the table. We need to create the professionals for the future, define them, define the training, and understand what the cooperation fora are, where we learn how to take steps forward. We work on cyber intelligence, which is a basic concept, and it's been for years now, and we have engineers, physicists, criminologists, sociologists, historians, and in integration lies the wealth of this. So that's the model we need to face. Well, out of time now. Just one final soundbite, as small and short as possible, so that we can resume it next year. Well, next year we'll be back and we will discuss cyber intelligence, I'm sure of that. What about Cyberwar? Yes, Cyberwar as well. There will be one of these large incidents that maybe has destabilized it all and will go back to the same. And I myself think this is one of the disciplines where we can explore creativity plus the professional challenges as well. And that's it. An amazing future ahead of us. I share same soundbite or conclusion as my colleague. And there are some national companies that will be having their own cyber intelligence program with and their own skills, capabilities, and employees. I think if we could have a claim here, cyber intelligence, that's the key to the matrix. I'd be even simpler. If we go to Google next year and we type cyber intelligence, we will have the definition straight away. This is something This is something we're working on. We are learning a new model, a new topic, and the main idea is that it will be part of the country's strategies and the company's strategies as well. So we are running very late now. I would like to thank my panelists for their attendance, for sharing their knowledge. It's been a true pleasure. Between you and the audience with their questions, you made it quite easy. And that's been all. Thank you again, the audience, for staying. I'm hungry. I guess they're hungry too, and they want to go to the parlor. It's all been wonderful. Thank you very much to all of you, and see you later today.